This is an absolutely crazy conversation. Today, my guest, Richard De Chevigny, and we chat about how he went from homeless to building a successful mortgage business, went through a divorce, lost 130 pounds, rebuilt his entire mindset and his mortgage business. And we also do a deep dive into AI. Richard is one of the smartest mortgage brokers I know, who's actively a mortgage broker and has the most advanced AI stuff I have ever seen. Absolutely love this conversation. It's inspiring. It will give you ideas in terms of how to improve your process. And honestly, Richard's straight up amazing dude. Hey, I'm Scott Beckford. This is the I Love Mortgage Brokering podcast. And each week we bring you guests to help inspire you and motivate you and help give you ideas you can apply to your mortgage business. And this week's guest does not disappoint. Before I jump into this episode, I want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ownwell. Ownwell is an amazing tool for Canadian mortgage brokers. They can use it to monitor their clients and their referral partners' databases, their home equity, their buying power on a monthly basis. They create these amazing reports that create conversations, and the conversations turn into clients, turn into referrals. You need to check them out at ownwell.ca/Scott and check out this conversation with Richard. Hey, Richard, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Scott, for having me.
Hey, so I'm really excited for this conversation. There's a bunch of different paths we could go, but maybe before we get into that, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you got into the mortgage biz.
Okay, well, it's kind of a long story, but I got into the mortgage biz because in my prior career, I was the director of IT and social media for a company owned by a large investment company. But my role was really like project manager, overseeing, I guess, the accounting department and operations. My job was really to streamline their operations and help them be more efficient. At the same time, doing all the accounting and financial reporting. I would move around from company to company. So every time the company would sell, I'd be unemployed again. So I got sick and tired of being a professional job seeker. And then I decided that I was going to do something with my skills that could help other people. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but one of my really close friends, is one of the largest mortgage or loan officers out in the United States. And he was the one that told me, hey, you should think about being a loan officer. And then that's when I ran into your podcast. And
So how many years ago was that?
That was in 2017 when I decided that I was going to become a mortgage broker. And then it took me a year really to decide if I wanted to do that.
To get licensed in your province?
Licensing was difficult. But you know what? For me, I wanted to make sure that if I did it, I could add value. I wanted to do something different because I had a mortgage with what I thought was the best mortgage broker in Winnipeg. And they really let me down. It wasn't very transparent. And even though I was pretty financial savvy because I was an accountant at the time, they really let me down, and I thought that the process could be better. So I ended up coming across your podcast, and at the end of every episode, you had the DeLorean question, and I had these big whiteboards up in my office. So every time they had the DeLorean question, I would.
What was the most common responses? I mean, I think I know the answers, but if you actually documented them, what were the most common responses? So
it was, have a CRM in place from day one. It was watch your process. No docs, no talks, right? That was a really big one for me. And then just creating your avatar and sticking to it. And I had a hard time doing that at first because I was hungry for business. So I did anything I could. But when I got to the end of all your episodes, I ended up having my blueprint there. I had all the things that I needed to focus on to create my process. And then I ran into this company called Mortgage Coach out in the States that did mortgage planning. And I was super stoked to be the only one in Canada doing it. And I learned the system. And then when I went to get it live, it was geo-locked, so I couldn't actually run it in Canada.
So then maybe I know what Mortgage Coach is, but for anybody listening that doesn't, maybe give me 30 seconds on what is Mortgage Coach.
Mortgage Coach is just like, I guess, a mortgage planning software that compares different mortgage options side by side. And it also projects out how each of those options are going to affect someone's net wealth over different time horizons.
This kind of combines
it was a tool that I could really use to compare mortgages, apples to apples.
Yeah. It kind of connects your financial planning.
Yeah. So I wasn't really a financial planner. I was an accountant, but I worked with, lots of financial advisors. So I knew their business. so I ended up getting geo-locked, and then I just said, okay, well, I guess I got to build this myself. So I went and I spent a couple weeks just building it out in Excel, and I've been using it ever since.
Right. Okay. And so you've got your own version of a planning tool that you built. You've also built some pretty cool stuff when we were chatting. Okay. So one of the things that I love that we've chatted about before is that you have, obviously everybody talks about interest rates, but you talk about APR. Maybe explain that to me and why that is your focus versus what most people think. I think I know the answer, but I want you to explain why you do that.
Yeah. So I try to focus on APR because it started because everyone was posting, these low frill mortgage rates, which I am strongly against, just because they're very restrictive a lot of times, and it lands clients in a bad position. But using my software, I was able to realize that it was actually not the rate that made the difference. The rate controls how much you pay every month, but it doesn't control how much the total mortgage costs.
It's like price versus cost.
Correct. Yeah.
It's essentially
price versus cost. And then when I noticed that I was comparing mortgage strategies side by side, so even something small as monthly payment versus accelerated biweekly, or even just biweekly versus accelerated biweekly, the costs are different. The true cost is different. And then when you throw in like private lending and other things like that, other fees that are associated with it, you really need to drill down to APR to find out what is the true cost. And I didn't even realize this for years. I was using my software that I created, and I worked primarily at the time with financial planners. And it was one of the financial planners that I was working with saying like, wow, did you realize that because we're getting $46,000 in tax refunds for this client, the APR is actually this? And I was like, oh, do you know what? All that time, I wasn't actually including the credits that we were getting in the mortgage strategy. So I was still doing it. They were still growing their wealth, but I wasn't actually including it as part of the APR calculation. And then when I started doing that, I bounced the idea off a couple other financial planners that I was working with. And I realized that I was sitting on a gold mine for clients that whole time. I had a better way to explain it to them. And then when I run this out for a lot of my clients, a lot of them are getting 1.5. I have several clients that are less than 0% APR. Okay, you're going to have
to, we're going to dumb this right down. Pretend I'm 10. So dumb this down for me so that I understand how what are the tax benefits that they're getting that you're also including in the entire strategy, just so I understand.
Okay, so APR in a nutshell is the total cost represented as a rate for the loan term. So you would take whatever the interest cost plus any other fees that are being charged. So if there's lender fees or anything like that, any taxes or closing costs, you would sum all that up and divide that by the total loan amount over the term length. And then that'll give you the APR, or the percentage rate, the average cost for the term. And then when you start adding back credits that you would get, so if you got a cashback mortgage, you would add that in there or subtract that from the cost. You would also subtract out any types of tax refunds. And for my clients, there's lots of different ways that you can generate tax refunds. You can do cash damming. You can do all kinds of things like that. But those are very high maintenance and high administration for people who typically want to set it and forget it. So the easy way to approach it is, we're already getting all their income documents. And when we're getting their NOAs, we can see how much RSP contribution room they have. And if you have a set of clients and one of them is making $120,000 and one of them is making $60,000, well, the person who's making $120,000 is at a higher marginal tax rate. So if we can create a strategy that reduces their total income and reduces their marginal tax rate, then at the end of the year, when tax time comes, they should generate a tax refund from any of the RSPs that they contribute towards the year. And when we take those tax refunds, those estimated tax refunds, and subtract those from the cost, that'll actually show you the total net cost of the strategy if they follow through with it.
Right.
So the problem with a lot of people who try to do this is everyone wants to do these mortgage strategies. Everyone wants to provide this advice, but they don't have the process in place to do it. They don't have the mechanism to follow up. A lot of them don't have the desire to follow up. They want to do that mortgage.
They want to sell it and move on. Yeah.
Yep. And that's what I say to a lot of the people that I talk to is, and I got this from mortgage coaches, like markets are cyclical, right? So interest rates, they're going to go up and down. But more importantly, people's personal lives change. So my job really only begins after the mortgage is funded. Getting people approved for a mortgage who qualify is easy, right? It's the follow-up that's hard. And that's where I really shine is I'm able to keep in contact with the clients. I have systems and processes in place to monitor the market. I have my own custom my own custom reporting that I do internally and to clients just to show them, this was your loan when we closed it. This is your estimated balance now. This is what your house was worth and what it's worth now. Here's the other mortgages on the market, and here's how much money we can save you. And if we're ever at a situation where my client can save money, then I call them proactively so they don't have to worry about, do I have the best mortgage right now?
Yeah. One of the things Jim Tolucas would ask people, say, which department calls you to adjust your mortgage throughout the term when there's a ton of
who's responsible, right? Who's responsible for calling me when you can save me money?
Yeah, no one will phone you because it's not they don't do that. So, but the great part is that there's people that will sell this, but they don't actually have the system to deliver on it, and so it's a lot of hype, and it sounds good, but it's actually the execution falls down. But you've actually built out systems for tracking all of this so that it's not like you're manually having to go check all your files to see which ones you actually have a system that reports it for you, right?
Yep, correct. Yeah. So whenever I can update my system to I'll put the new rates in and I press a button and then it runs through all my clients and then it'll just tell me like this person, this person, this person. And I actually had brokers out in Ontario who were paying me to use my software, but then they just stopped because even though they were paying me, they didn't actually use it. So then they would say, okay, well, can you run these strategies for me and we'll give you, at $400 per file. And I thought, well, it paid well, right? It doesn't take me long to put a strategy together for a client that I don't know, right? It's just numbers at that point. It takes longer when it's my actual client because I get a goal survey where I track all kinds of things to see what their risk tolerances are, to find out what kind of person are they, so that I'm not presenting a plan to them that's completely offside with their emotions.
Right. Okay, dude, that's incredible. And so how have you started this way back how have you started to implement AI into some of your business processes? Because I can tell you're a process guy, you're a process driven person, but I'm interested to know what sort of AI things you've been using to make yourself more productive and effective.
Yeah. So I think, AI is great. And I'm really, people think that I'm ahead of the game in terms of AI, but I feel like I'm just starting to scratch the surface because
I feel like you're ahead of me. When you told me some of the stuff you're doing, I thought I'm in this as up to my knees and you're up to your waist. Like if we're both in the pool, I'm in my knees and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And you're up to your waist or up to your armpits. And I think, wow, there's so much more that I could be doing. So maybe just give me some examples of how you've been implementing AI to make yourself, your business work better.
Yeah. So I think like my goal right now is, how do I help more people while still maintaining, a relatively comfortable schedule? So the first thing I thought of is, what do I spend the most time doing? And is there a way to automate that? So most recently, I've implemented AI to review my emails that are coming in, categorize them for me. And then anything that does require a response, it'll actually flag it as important. It'll draft a response for me to review. And then I can go in, I can make sure that the response is a good one, and then I can send it. So it does save me a lot of time. And I was very hesitant at first because I thought, well, there's no way that AI is going to be able to understand my tone, understand exactly what the client's asking for, and then respond appropriately. So I'll spend more time just editing it. But it surprised me. It actually does a really good job, and it has a ways to go because it does still respond to responses that I send. So I'll send a response to someone and it'll draft another response to my response. So I have some tweaking to do, which I take time every week to make a small change in my process. So all those kinks are going to get worked out. Another big area that I'm using AI in is for doc review now.
Yeah.
So doc review and just kind of like underwriting the file, making sure that I'm
it's like
seeing
a pre-screening though. It's just finding obvious. It's not like the final thing, right?
It's not the final thing. And I think it's too important of a transaction to rely completely on AI because it does make mistakes.
Yeah.
Documents come in different all the time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really hard for AI, at least for now, to interpret it. But I am pretty good at writing rules around it so that when something is an anomaly, I can write a rule around it so that it knows for next time. But it takes a while to get it right. And there has to be some, manual intervention just to make sure that everything's good. I couldn't imagine a time where everything is going to be completely automated. And I'm already at the point where I can throw a T4 into something and it'll fill out the information on a form for me. Like it wouldn't be very much work for me to get it to populate, Finmo based on the documents. Right. I just wouldn't want it to do that. I still want to have that oversight to make sure that it's done right, because any mistake, it could be a big mistake. It could be fatal for a client's purchase or refinance. And I don't want to gamble with my client's money.
Right. But it can help. So you've used some AI there. Talk to me about AI agents and explain those to me and to our listeners, and what's an example of an AI agent you built?
So an AI agent is kind of like, a ChatGPT on steroids, right? For those people who already use something like Zapier, it's like Zapier, except it could run very automated and repeatedly. So an example would be when someone books a meeting with me, Zapier would then add that contact into my CRM, add them onto a spreadsheet for me, and then add them into a contact into my phone with notes saying this person was added from Calendly, so on and so on. An AI agent will actually take it one step further, and it'll do those same tasks, but then I could integrate large language models or different AIs into it, like ChatGPT or Perplexity or Google AI. And it can understand the data that's coming in better and then create its own tasks to facilitate whatever you want to do. So rather than say, do this and then do that, tell me what you need to do and then do those tasks for me, right? So it can automatically, if I wanted to, I can talk to one of my AI agents and say, book a meeting with Scott Peckford at a time that I'm free and he's free on this date. And then it would automatically understand what I'm saying. It would create an email, send it to you, give you my calendar availability. And then once you booked it, it would put it into my calendar. It would automatically update you and saying we're booked. It would send follow-ups automated just because you're telling it what you want to achieve, and it'll actually go down that path.
It'll actually follow. It's got some more. Yeah, it's not just the single task. It's multiple complex tasks that are executed on your behalf.
Yep.
Essentially. Okay. That's amazing. And then how are you using it for social stuff? Like, is there some things you're doing on social I thought were really interesting as well?
Yeah. So right now,
or how are you using AI with social? Maybe not agents, but how have you implemented AI into your social media strategies?
I'm not using agents yet for my social media, but it's close. What I do right now is I generated a big long list of social media ideas that I keep in a spreadsheet. Mm-hmm. And then it's in a Google Sheet. And then when I want to generate that, I just hit yes, this little yes box. It'll actually then go into ChatGPT. It'll create the post in my tone. And then it'll create an image for me. It'll also create any hashtags. It'll post it into my Trello board. And then I'll have this, I have a Trello board that says these posts are approved. These ones are draft. And then I can post those. Now, AI agents, there are ways to automate the whole process where
and have them even post it.
It can even post it. It can post it to every one of your platforms. It could automatically take all your long form video and then put into micro pieces. You can throw your baby effects over it. All automated.
Yeah. So I've done a few baby. I'm doing the Yeti one next. That's the next.
Oh yeah.
They kill me. I heard something recently that AI is going to literally completely flood content in the next 2 years. All content will be AI related.
we're going to get to a point where you want to watch a movie. You just tell it what type of movie you want to watch, who you want in the movie, and it's going to generate it right on the spot.
No, that would be so crazy.
Yeah,
that would be
10 years away. Not even
you know
10
what?
years away.
I would not be surprised. So then where's the human creativity? Where's the piece that, like, what are we going to be doing? We're going to be plumbers. I saw something. We're going to be plumbers and electricians, and AI is going to be doing all the creative work.
You know what? I hear a lot of people saying that AI is not going to put mortgage people out of business, but I think it definitely could. I think in the short term, the people who are using AI and adopting it and learning it and failing with it, those are the people that are going to take over for the people who aren't using it at all.
Yeah.
But we are going to come to a time where we may not be needed, right?
Right.
I think the big argument is people find comfort in dealing with people, especially when it comes to mortgages. But when I think of the things that I'm doing with AI right now, and you know what, a lot of times I talk to my AI, or I have brainstorming sessions with my AI. I tell it about my hopes and dreams and fears and problems I'm having. It's like a little therapist, right? In a lot of cases. And I'm more comfortable talking to an AI than most people just because there's no judgment. There's no judgment.
Right.
And
everything's positive. I find with AI. That's the only thing I'm like, be a little, like, I don't find, I like my coach to give me, kick my ass a little bit. And I find AI is like, you're doing great, Scott. I'm like, no.
But you have to tell it, right?
You have to tell it. Yeah. Because its natural tone is actually, it's like, it's very positive. Like, good question. And it's like, no. Or it'll give me these positive things. And I'm like,
you have to tell it in the instructions in the back end to just give you the hard truth that if you're being too positive, just, you know, cut to the chase. Tell me what I need to do. Don't sugarcoat anything, right? And when I did that, I think you actually posted something about that. And when I posted that, I tried it in my Chat GPT, and the things that it said, it really hit home. And I thought, like, wow, like, you know what? It's people have a hard time asking the tough questions because they don't really want to hear the answers. And when you lean into it, it's amazing the growth that's just on the other side of that discomfort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're definitely, it's incredible tool for sure. And I have found that recently, one of the ways I've been creating content is I still love writing, and I will talk. I'll say, okay, I'm going to write a blog post, but I'm going to just talk about all my ideas around this topic. Mm-hmm. And I just walk and talk. And then I said, then I want you to create a 300 word blog post that is not, I don't ever use it. What I do is though, but that gets me like 70% of the way there. And then I go, okay, these are my thoughts that have been clarified and cleaned up. And then I go, okay, and I make adjustments. I'm like, wow, that was so much quicker than sitting there with a blank page. Yep. And then where do I start? Right. Yep. And it's very collaborative that way.
Yeah. I love talking to it. When you use your voice, the amount of information that's in that one chat session can be repurposed for a multitude of things.
Yeah, it's interesting. Okay, so we've talked about your process. We've talked about your building of tools. We talked about your using of AI. Let's talk about mindset for a second. So you've had definitely, like, we've had you doing some mindset coaching calls, which have been awesome. Great feedback on them. Maybe just walk me through some of your story of. We probably should have started with this, but like where you kind of started and some of the things that you've had to get through to be where you are now, because you're a really positive, upbeat guy. Like, I see your content, everything is, but you could just as easily not be that too. Right. Like you could, there were a lot of, I guess, decision points that you made where you went one direction instead of another.
Yeah. I think, it's really easy to be positive during bad times when you've been through really bad times. Right. And nobody really knows, what good times are without the bad. And I would say through my career, even before, you know, if someone were to look back, 20 years ago, I was not the person that I am today. Right. I was always a happy-go-lucky person, but I was a person of different character back then. So I had to make some changes in myself. And now, I find that life still throws challenges my way all the time. I had a number of large challenges through my career. And one of the reasons why I built my processes from the start was I knew that life has ups and downs. And I still wanted to be able to provide consistent service to my clients. No matter what I'm going through, it doesn't matter what I'm going through when someone else is purchasing a house or when they're going through their own financial troubles. They need a rock that they can lean on, right? They need someone who isn't going to freak out when their life's in shambles, who's going to just be the calm head there. And I would say, like, just based on my numbers, my mortgage numbers every year, they ebb and flow, right? They went up and down, and typically they went up and down. They would go down during times of struggle. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people don't know the struggles that I go through, but I don't want them to. Some people do. But I noticed that during those struggles, I grew. And when I come out of those struggles, it almost seems like no matter what happens, you're going to get through it, right? Like I've had times where I said, like, this is the worst day of my life. I feel like my whole life is falling apart. And you know what? A month later, you're like, wow, like this is the best feeling, right? Like, I'm way better than I was a month ago. And whenever you face another challenge, you always remember back to what you thought was the worst day. It's not so bad, right?
Right.
So
that sounds like something Goggins does. He calls it his like cookie jar. So when he's out in running or something, he's in pain, he's suffering, and then he'll remind himself about other things he's already done. So I did this and I did this. And so then what happens is that provides some context, so if you've gone through some tough stuff and you can remind yourself of that and go, well, I got through that and that really sucked. So I can get through this too. Sort of as a reminder so that you're not overwhelmed in the moment. I find that to be helpful sometimes.
And one of the things that I use as, I guess, my reason is my kids, right? So there was a time, during my separation in 2021 is when I decided to separate. It was a really rough period. And at first my kids didn't realize, right? I'd put my suit on every day. I'd drive them to school. I was the primary person at home doing all the cooking and the cleaning while running my mortgage business, while trying to keep the kids, satisfied. I would drive them to school. I would come home, lay in bed and lay in a suit, lay in bed and do mortgages if they came in, but I would not look for business. I didn't want any more files to come in, but I also wanted to do a good job with the ones that did come in. Mm-hmm. And I remember sitting there one day, my kids were looking at me and I felt like I was at my breaking point. Like I didn't know how I was going to turn up for my kids the next day. I didn't have anything left in me. And then I realized, like, this is the moment. Like, the kids know I'm going through a rough patch here. They know that the family is about to be torn apart. What was that?
How old are they?
So now they're 14. My son's turning 14 next month, and my daughter's 16.
Okay. Yeah.
So I remember looking at them and I said, do you want? They're going to learn a lot by how I handle this situation. So I need to work on myself. I need to work on the things around me, the things that I can control, because there's a whole lot of things that I'm worrying about that aren't in my control. And that's what was really bringing me down. It was all those things that weren't in my control. So that's when I hit the gym, and then the gyms got shut down for COVID.
Yeah.
I then ordered a Peloton, but it didn't arrive until January 2021 2021. And then, I just started working on myself, lost like 130 pounds. And
dude, that's incredible. How long did that take?
Well, so about 8 months, I lost the majority of it. And then I started gaining muscle, really. I was still losing fat, gaining muscle. But then I noticed everything for me started changing, because I started looking back at, man, I didn't think I was going to make it out of that situation. And now look at me. It was like I had a new leaf on life, and everything started getting better, at least mindset wise. And then I thought, okay, well, I can use this as my fuel going forward to get out of any situation, any bad situation. And I've had a number of bad situations since then. Nothing, I don't think, will ever top that era.
Yeah.
Which is good, because now I could always look back, no matter what's happening. I could look back and say, listen, I didn't think I was going to make it out of that, and I did. And even before, like as a youth, I spent 6 months homeless, right? And to be a youth homeless, I look back at that time, I didn't know how I was ever going to get out of that.
Yeah.
But I look back at it now, and I think I can still remember some happy times while I was homeless. How
Right.
could you find happiness in those moments? But I do, because they taught me a lot. And I made a post about that a couple months back about, I wasn't always the man you see today. And
Yeah, I saw that.
when I was drafting that post, it made me really realize that every bad decision that I made in my past, every wrong choice, everything that I've been through led me to where I am now. And it's given me a unique perspective to really lean in and help clients, no judgment, be that rock for them, be the rock for my family, myself, even when I need it. And I don't think I'd be able to be the broker that I am today if I didn't go through all that stuff. As stupid as some of the stuff that I did,
Right.
I wouldn't be the person today if it wasn't for that.
Right. That's amazing, man. I love that. And getting it, and it's definitely like working on your physical health helps all areas too. Like I'm sure you probably find more energy. It's just it's a
clarity.
Yeah. Clarity
focus. After a workout. You know what? I've almost every time that before I get on the Peloton bike, I don't want to get
how many times have you done like rides now? Like how many?
I just hit my 1,000th ride a while ago. So yeah, 1,000 rides, and most of them are 30 minutes at least. But most of them are.
Do they send you anything for that when you get 1,000 rides, or is it this 100? No. You get a Century shirt, right?
Yeah, they give you a Century shirt. I remember getting my Century shirt, and I thought, like, wow, do you want? I had all kinds of exercise equipment that I never used, and it wasn't. Yeah. The Peloton's no different than everything else. It's actually harder, I find. But what I found in it was community. I found a group of these, Peloton dads. I joined the group. I started getting involved with these guys. And then I created this accountability group for other dads that wanted to just get healthier and work on their mindset. And then I could see all these other people changing in front of me. And it was more inspirational for myself. So, kind of selfishly, I was running these groups because it also motivated me to do better, because I feel like not only would I let myself down, because it's really easy to let yourself down and lie to yourself, but it's a lot harder when you're letting your family down, or your friends, when you have that accountability partner.
Yeah, accountability is a good thing. Man, this has been an awesome conversation. If people are looking for you online, where can they find you?
I'm on Instagram, Canada Mortgage Planner, or Facebook, Richard De Chevigny. You can feel free to add me on there. Always happy to help other brokers.
Okay, thanks, Richard.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks again for listening, and hopefully you were inspired by my conversation with Richard. I've got a quick ask for you. If you want to get an email from me every week, I've got this email called the 321 email, where I share 3 things to check out that I've found, 2 ideas, tactics, or tools for AI, and 1 idea from me. You can get on that email. You can either click on this show episode and go to join my newsletter. You can go to my social account, join it there, click on my link tree, or you can just send me an email or a DM. I'm telling you, this is an email you're going to want to see every single week. Put a lot of energy and effort into it to making sure that is useful for mortgage brokers. Check that out. I just want to say also a huge thank you to Richard for coming on and chatting with me and just being so vulnerable and sharing what's going on. I found it very inspiring, my conversation with him, and what he's been able to accomplish, given where he started. And he could certainly just as easily ended up in a very bad place, but took ownership of his own life and made different choices. And man, it's inspiring. And what he's with AI is just awesome. Thanks for listening. And as I always say, the reason we create this podcast is there's no problem in your mortgage business that someone else hasn't already solved. Your problem is who's got the answer. This podcast is designed to provide some of those answers. Thanks again for listening. I'm Scott Peckford. I will see you on the next episode.